Hi everybody and welcome back to BBC. Every once in a while one of our listeners of the Bodhisattva Breakfast Corner sends us in something to look at that either touched them or they wanted us to share on. And recently we had one of our listeners send a YouTube link which was called the Bystander experiment. And so I wanted to share a little bit about my response to the listener's request on looking at this video. I'm not quite sure exactly who sort of started this little project because there are a number of people who speak after the video, and ABC News is in some of the other ones. But in the beginning, it's called the Heroic Imagination Project, and the director is Philip Zimbardo. And he wanted to test the human family's capacity to help each other in crisis, or when there has been some occurrence just in our general life, coming upon another human being in trouble. And he'd always loved the story of the Good Samaritan in the Bible, where there is a man, I remember the story, some of the pieces of it, but he was either injured or fell sick along the road to Jericho. And during the course of the day, people along the road just passed him by, not asking, not offering any type of help, until a man from Samaria came. And this Good Samaritan stopped and not only asked him if he was okay, but according to Philip, he took the man and put him on his camel, took him to an inn, made sure that he was cared for and fed and covered the bill. And so Philip wanted to see if the human family honored in some way that golden rule about, I would like to treat others as I would have them treat me. And that it's about social community and reciprocity. So in our minds, thinking about how would I come to any situation in my life regarding that person in that situation right now as myself, and how would I like to help or encourage or support. And that from what he discovered with this video and some of these experiments is that there are many situations that don't get the support. Human beings, being who we are, sentient beings, we have a lot of reasons on why we are unable or unwilling to support each other in a time of difficulty. So there are two underlying universal thoughts that go. First is that we all want to help. That's one of the human family's aspirations. And then there's another one that says, nobody else is helping, and I'm not going to be the one to step out to help. We're all in agreement not to help. And this is also a message that underlies a lot of our reactions to people in trouble. And so what happened is that they set up these scenarios. They took a number of actors and they put them in these scenarios, sort of like candid camera, the way that we used to have in the United States, put together these contrived situations where most of the people are just general public, not even knowing that the camera's on, and then they'll set up these actors and actresses in these situations and see what happens. So the first one was, these were both in Great Britain. There was a group of actors and actresses standing waiting for a subway, and there was one man who was not an actor. And what happened is a woman had a backpack on her back, and another actor came up right next to the honest, not acting observer and stole her wallet from the back of her backpack. And what's interesting with this video is that all the actors and actresses are watching this, as is the innocent bystander. They all see, they kind of go like that, they see him walk away. You can just see everybody following this guy with her wallet, and all kind of looking at each other but not looking at each other. And inevitably, nobody chased the man. Nobody said anything to a woman like, "Excuse me, but someone has just taken your wallet." They all stood around silently, watching, looking at each other, and there was this silent consensus that nobody was going to get involved. So that was And the point I think of this video is to put ourselves in the same positions and say, would I help? And if not, why? Is there some harm? Is there an indifference? Is there a passivity? Am I in a mental space that I can't? And so these are kind of the fundamental questions. The next one was at the Liverpool street station, and there was one actor who dressed in 3 different disguises, and then a woman actor. And what they did is, the first one is he was dressed in a suit and a tie, and he went and he sat down at the base of the steps of the train station next to a gate, and he proceeded to look like he had collapsed. This respectable gentleman. And so the camera's watching the people hurrying by. It took only 6 seconds for someone to respond, and a woman bent down. You could hear her say, "Sir, are you all right?" The police got involved. There was a crowd of people around this respectable gentleman. Then he left, and then the next time a woman dressed, she had on a sweater and a blouse and a skirt, stockings and shoes. She looked like maybe a working woman, young, maybe in her late 20s, early 30s, and she looked like she had passed out. And what it was, I mean, her hands were just thrown over the stairs. I mean, she looked like she was unconscious. This one, 4 minutes, 34 people walked by, and finally what happens is this young woman walks by, she pauses, she looks, she walks away, she comes back, she looks, and out of the right side of the screen, this big burly construction worker, he's got a hard hat on and a tool belt, he comes right up to the woman, the actress who's being unconscious, and says, "Lady, are you all right?" And the woman who's been vacillating steps in automatically, and before you know it, there's a group of people surrounding this woman trying to help her. So it only takes one person to just sort of break out of the pack, and then things change. They say that if the street were deserted, someone may have helped her, but the passerbys have made a silent rule as a group not to help. And then we put Peter, who was the respectable gentleman, now we put him, they had him as a drunk, which he didn't get any help at all. And then they put him in casual clothes in pain, actually saying, "Help me, help me, help me. Please, somebody, help me, help me." There's a man sitting, reading a magazine next to him as he's writhing on the sidewalk. Nobody stopped to help him. So the point of the story, now, once again, this is a very small little pinpoint of the human family in a very specific situation. So we can't say that this is the whole thing that would happen with us if we were in the same situation. But there was a woman named Professor Helen Herte who said that we have these 2 conflicting rules in our minds as human beings. We ought to help, but we should do what everybody else is doing. And that there's this pressure silently being exerted on us. And I looked at about 6 or 7 other videos, and more often than not, it's the minority of the people who step forward. There was a woman dressed with a muslin headscarf on that walked into a bakery shop in Texas. And there were 22 people that totally ignored the altercation between her as an actress and an actor on the other side of the bakery counter, calling her a terrorist, calling her, take your jihad and go back home, take your towel over your head and go back home, we don't need you. She was born in Chicago, she's been raised in America her whole life, and the altercations, all she wants is an apple strudel. And in the course of about 10 minutes, there's over 40 people that come into this situation. 6 of them side with the clerk, even give him a thumbs up for refusing her service and saying some very derogatory things. 13 of them stood up, and all of them quite upset and quite passionate about the unfairness of it. And then there were 22 that came into that whole scenario and said nothing. So ABC News followed some of these people out to their cars, unbeknownst to them that's been all set up. The ones who didn't want to get involved and actually supported the clerk with the derogatory racist remarks wanted to have nothing to say about it. The ones who stood up for the young woman, including 2 young women, one of them who was also Muslim, not in a headscarf, a father whose son has served in Afghanistan, a young couple together, is what it was is that justice binds people together, a sense of fairness for some folks that they just can't stand by and let injustice happen. And what was very interesting is that it also showed how Americans, at least maybe in that one situation, how polarized we are. We're either ready to stand and defend, or we're not only silent, but we also share the same view that somebody who's different, who's dressed different, who has a different religion, doesn't deserve the same type of respect and freedom and equal treatment as the rest of us. And so there was looking at the polarized aspect of these scenarios. But I think the whole point, and as I watched them, was to see, what would we each do? If we were, and what is the reasonings? I remember times in Seattle walking by the homeless, and there's a lot of homeless people in our cities in America. Some days I would spend time, I'd talk to them, I'd go get them some food, I'd touch base with them, and sometimes I could hardly look at them. And I think it was just, what was my universe looking like that day? What was the state of my mind? If I was in a happy, open-hearted way, I was much more likely to engage. But if I was busy, I was running late, I had a goal, I was going in to shop, I had to get out, I had something going on, I didn't want to be inconvenienced. I didn't want to stop my life for somebody else. So whether these contrived situations just show a small point of the human family and how we relate to each other when each of us is in trouble, or maybe there's a little bit of a bigger view that this is something for all of us to think very deeply about. What would be our relationship to people in trouble, strangers, and how they dress and what they look like and how they speak? How does that affect our relationship to them, and how does it affect our ability to help? Because in the big scope of things, being Dharma practitioners, we've got this aspiration to cultivate bodhicitta, which is irregardless of who people are. We do our best to help, not to endanger our lives, not to endanger other people's lives. But how do we sort of nourish that aspiration and at the same time look at the things that are obstacles and getting in our way to be able to move toward anybody to help them, knowing that we would want that type of help if we were in their position. So anyway, it was quite a lot of thought-provoking material for me in the past 2 days. So I wanted to share the questions, and I wanted to share also my experience of watching the videos. Very, very provoking. Thank you.